Hi, I'm Julie Thompson. Welcome to the Plymouth School Committee candidate interview. I want to take a moment to thank our candidate for participating in this interview and collaborating with PACTV to bring this informational programming to residents and voters this election season. Let me explain the format. We will be conducting a one-on-one interview-style Q&A format with each candidate lasting at the most 45 minutes. Responses will not be timed, and follow-up questions may be asked during this format. We aim to ask up to 5 questions, but that will depend on the length of time of the responses, along with any follow-up discussion during this exchange. Candidates will be allowed to address anything not covered or things they would like to add clarification to at the end of the interview in their closing remarks. Let's get started. Today we're speaking with Michael Spellman, one of the 4 candidates running for the 2 full-term seats for the Plymouth School Committee in the Plymouth Town election. Michael, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, we're going to dive right into the questions, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely.
Okay, put on my little timer. Okay, the first question. The school committee has 4 primary responsibilities as outlined on the Plymouth Public Schools website.
Yep.
One of them is to advocate for the school system with citizens and the town government.
Right.
What data can you draw from to make your case for the strength and outcomes of the K-12 system?
Okay, well, thank you for asking that question. To advocate, well, first of all, I've been an advocate for children just about my entire life. I mean, I moved from a fairly lucrative job in the media industry into teaching about 2.5 years ago. I was a baseball coach here in Plymouth for probably about 25 years. I was on the South Plymouth, the Plymouth South boosters for 3 years, vice president for 2 years. I started along with a teacher in Plymouth, the Plymouth Special Olympics program 25 years ago. So I think I've long been an advocate for children. I've taught Sunday school. I've helped lead the youth ministry at New Hope Chapel of Plymouth. So I think I've always been an advocate for children. So that being said, I think I've always advocated for children in the community, and that actually has a lot to do with why I'm here today, running for this office.
Okay, and the question was, what data would you draw from? If you're explaining to someone and fighting for the school system, where would you get your information, your intel about how well the school system does?
Okay, obviously I'd want to know about accreditation and how well they stand. Yeah. Yep. And I would want to know, what the scores are on, the MCAS and things like that, just to see how well we're reaching our children and how we're moving them up. And I know, a lot of those numbers have been down in recent years. Because of COVID, and kind of the COVID hangover, we call it in the teaching industry, and kids aren't quite where they would have been a few years ago. So I'd be interested in looking at how they've been coming out of that as compared to other school systems, how they've been progressing. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So if you had to go in front of the select board and, let's say the school system was looking for some additional money, and you had to make your case for that, what, aside from those things that you mentioned, for MCAS and accreditation, what are some of the other things you could cite about the school system that could bolster your case to get more money for it?
About the school system? Well, certainly if we were lagging behind in any area, that would give us an opportunity to say, hey, this is an area we need to address. And you compare to other school systems in the area. That's what we do in Marshfield all the time. And of course, those are the areas we look to. I know I'd want to personally believe in what we were advocating for, and assuming I would pull out as much data as possible to get, you want a big kind of global view of what's going on out there before you advocate for something. But yeah, I would certainly be prepared, I believe, to answer that question. I've always done a lot of admin stuff in the newspaper industry, so like gathering facts and figures is something I've always been pretty adept at. So. Yeah, okay. To give a specific, I'm not on the school committee now, so to give a more specific answer, I think I'm not quite prepared for that. But in general, I think it's just that would be my approach. Is I just look for the areas of weakness, and I would find a way to advocate. Yeah.
Okay, alrighty. Question number 2. There are 4 candidates running for 2 3-year terms. Each brings a different set of experiences and history. Given that one of the responsibilities of the school committee is to develop school system policies, how do you balance your own views and biases to serve the greater good for the entire K-12 system?
Okay, well, I actually, I'm friendly with a couple members of the board. I've known Vedna for quite some time. And I think what I would do is I do see myself more as kind of a fiscal and social conservative, so I think that might bring a little bit of a different perspective to the board. And I certainly, with a background in teaching like I've had last few years, I think that gives me fresh insight into what's happening in the classroom and when the rubber meets the road, what can really be done to assist. I've worked. I was a building sub for a year, so I got to work in a bunch of different hats within the school. I worked a lot in special ed, and obviously my background with coaching Special Olympics for 25 years, and I actually lead a Bible study for special needs young adults as well. I just think that would give me some perspective that perhaps isn't there. Now, I know the two candidates I'm running against are long-term members, and I've only heard good things about them, by the way. This isn't like, I'm not looking for, like a political, like a back and forth, and, I'm just looking to advocate, for who I am. They've done a wonderful job, from everything I've been told. But maybe just a fresh perspective of kind of that kind of fiscal conservative, social conservative, I guess is. Can
you now fiscal conservative? I understand. What do you mean by social conservative?
Social conservative. Well, I guess I'm a Christian, so I give kind of Christian mores, and I guess what and of course as a Christian we're basically called to love everyone and support everyone, and I would want every child that comes into the Plymouth school to, feel valued and safe, and but that said, there are things within the school system. I think we've all seen the news in recent years that are a bit concerning. Just about where some of the things have been headed, with parents really not being told what's going on in the schools, and that, as a parent, is something that bothered me. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so you utilize your own views to make sure that at least that was discussed.
Yes.
Okay.
That's a better way of framing what I'm trying to say. Yeah, I would want things to be out in the open. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, makes sense. The school budget.
Yep.
Makes up a large portion of the town's overall budget, and priorities for spending are often dictated by the needs of building upkeep and maintenance, collective bargaining outcomes, and mandates, whether they're funded or non-funded. What approach do you take to decide what gets approved and what is needed to be cut?
Okay, well, again, fiscal conservative, and I feel a certain responsibility to the taxpayer. I'm one of them, and I know that I always will read, when I worked for the newspaper for many years, and I would read the articles relating to budget in the town, and there would be things I'd disagree with, things I'd agree with. So I think I would probably be more conservative than other members in some ways. That being said, I'd want to balance that against the fact that I don't think there's any greater investment we can make as a community than in the next generation. And I think my, volunteer background, speaks to that.
Right.
It's just, I've always, and I've invested a lot of time for all the different things I've been involved in. I've always been a volunteer. I've never taken a penny from Special Olympics or youth sports or even AAU baseball when I was coaching. It's just, it's always been about that. So, and I think there's a lot of things we can do as volunteers sometimes, and parents taking more responsibility to take some of the, some of the onus off of the school system. So I would look for grassroots organization to perhaps always step in and maybe help offset some of those costs that are there now.
As volunteers?
Yes, as volunteers.
Yeah, okay.
I'm very, very much into volunteerism.
Okay. Now, let's talk about collective bargaining. Have you had any experience with doing that with, well, you're a teacher now.
I was on the other side of it.
So you're on the side of that, right. So it's pretty widely thought that teachers are incredibly valuable to and are not paid well.
Yeah.
That they're underpaid.
I would agree.
Okay. So how do you circle the square when they haven't had a raise, let's say, in 3 years, and they really deserve to have a raise, and yet you have all these other programs that you totally believe in and you want to fund? I
would look forward to that challenge. I mean, that is I've never been on the other side of collective bargaining, so I can't speak intelligently to it. All I can tell you is that, having been in the teacher position, believing that they're underpaid, I would find every way I could to make sure they were paid commensurately with what they do. Because having done this the last 3 years, I thought this was an easier job than it was going to be. You know, and when I was in the media industry making more money, now I look back, that was a much easier job, but this one is so much more rewarding, and that's why I did it, and that's why I've stuck with it. So what would I do? I can't give you X's and O's, you know, to kind of use a sports analogy, but I can tell you that I would be devoted to seeing the teachers got their fair share, and also maybe looking at some areas if I, you know, thought they weren't as valuable as paying teachers that perhaps would have to be cut, as you know, in order to pay. Yeah, because I think paying the teachers is something very much needed. You know, it's I look at what people are making in other industries and not having nearly the import to society that they do. So, yeah. I wish I had more specific information, but having never done it.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
Yeah.
Now, what about unfunded mandates? And for anyone that doesn't understand that, the state has certain mandates that every school system has to meet, but they don't fund it. So you have to find funding from your own source to do it. How do you deal with that if it's something that's just taking away from all the other things that you want to do, but now you have this mandate and you have to...
Are you talking about like for some of the VOTEC schools? And
for anything.
Yeah.
There's quite a few unfunded mandates that come through schools.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, that is the challenge, isn't it? I mean, I think a lot of times, because it's, I think number one, you know, I'm familiar with what you meant, the 4 responsibilities specific to the school committee. And that, you know, again, not having had a background in that, tough choices would have to be made. And if their requirements, you can't fight City Hall.
You can't say no.
Yeah, you can't say no. Yeah. So again, it would come down to just using what I felt in my personal opinion, advocating for the things that I thought were most important. I mean, you're going to have to basically come down, you know, these are top priorities. Yeah. These are a little lower. And I mean, that's the way it works in life. I mean, I don't know about school budgets, but I know about household budgets. Yeah. And I know this is how much needs to come in and these are the bills that get paid. Yeah. But as a teacher, I've had to learn, I'm making a little less than I used to, so you cut those things out. Yeah. And it's a matter of just, and I've worked with profit and loss statements before. It's the same principle. I mean, and if that's something, I mean, like my mortgage has to be paid. That might be like the thing you're mentioning. I would love to not pay my mortgage, you know? But that's there, and that's got to be paid. Right. You know, so yeah, you cut out what you personally feel is not as high a priority, and I guess that's the way you'd have to go. So when you're on the school committee and you have to choose between 2 programs, and one serves 400 kids and one serves 40, but they are both equally as important. Oh, well. What do you do? Okay, well, I mean, that's a hypothetical. I would say, like, I see the good that's done with like inclusion of special ed kids, and I know that requires aides. Yes. Who oftentimes, for the most part, aren't paid as much as the teachers. Right. That would it would have to be case by case. That's a brutally difficult question. It is. It is. It's and unfortunately, it's happening to school committees. Yeah, I know. You know. Yeah, I know. And those are the type of challenges we'd have. I mean, like having been in the schools, I think I might bring a fresh perspective because I've seen it. You know, with my own eyes. It's like an aide won't be there anymore because she found a job or he found a job that pays a little bit better, and what a difference that makes in some of the classrooms where you have kids who are on IEPs. Or, you know, so. Again, I mean, that's a hypothetical, so I don't think there's one specific thing I could say. It's a case by case. It's like, and I think I would measure up to the call to make those difficult decisions. I've had to make difficult decisions in life, and Okay. Yeah. All right. Let's go to question number 4. Yeah. There are many pressures on school committee members in general, not just in Plymouth, that have to do with DEI within the schools. Yes. Parental input. Curriculum adjustment, state directives, and ongoing societal changes. All of that, along with a heightened need for security at all of our schools, leaves the volunteer job of a school committee member very full. Yeah. How will you best learn and keep up with the continually changing roster of information and input that you will get? Okay, well, first of all, I'm pretty well read, both sides of the political aisle, I guess. But so I try to stay up with what people are saying in those areas. School protection, let's go to that. I love what my school does in Marshfield. We do lockdowns, we simulate those. Lock the doors, shut off the lights, pull the shades, the whole thing that we're called to do. Not to give too many details, but and I know Plymouth teaches that they have similar things. Having seen that, I'd want to take a look. Look at response time and how long it. Because I see our principals walking the halls. I would certainly want to review what Plymouth does in that area. As a school committee member, as much as it was in my purview to do so. So that's one. Some of the other things, our culture is changing so drastically, so quickly, and the challenges that creates are many, on many fronts, because there's two sides to every story sometimes, and it's finding that sweet spot where you can basically satisfy everyone, which will never happen.
Right.
But yeah.
So what about parental input? Now, I know in every town, parents call about all kinds of different things.
Yep.
All kinds of different things. And a lot of times the school committee has to review whatever the request was or the complaint was or whatever it is.
Yep.
What do you think are some of the areas that you're going to have to face and talk about and decide as a group? And I'm sure you've heard complaints from parents where you're teaching.
Oh, gosh.
What are some of the areas that you'd have to talk about?
Specific areas?
Yeah, the parents complain about.
Yeah. Oh, just that we would be open and honest about what's going on within our schools. Curriculum should never be off limits to parents, in my mind. They have every right to know what's going on in classrooms, in my mind. I think the ultimate decisions in a child's life are in the hands of the parents, not the school system. So I'd want to advocate for that.
But curriculum is not set by the parents. Curriculum is set by the
school committee. But they would have the parents. If there's an issue, parents should have input to it, is my position.
Oh, sure, they have input, but they don't set the curriculum.
They don't set it. No, set it. Oh, you're talking about just setting within the school. Okay. Can I get a little more clarification on what you mean by that?
Well, so you have a whole bunch of parents, let's say, that are calling up complaining about a certain curriculum that's being offered. Do you have to take like a survey of all the parents in the school to see, is it just, these 5 that, or is this a bigger problem?
Oh yeah, I would certainly weigh, I guess, my personal feelings a bit, but primarily go with what the parents said. And I'd want a bigger sampling of what the parents think. Of course I would. Okay. Sure. Yeah, now I understand more clearly what you're talking about. Sure. Yeah. It's case by case. Obviously I want to do what's best for the most people. I think that's essential. That's the call of somebody who's in public service.
Right.
It's not somebody who's serving an elected position to serve the entire constituency.
Right.
So yeah, that would be it'd certainly be my position to try to look into, to certainly do a thorough investigation to find out what all the parents really thought.
Right.
And kind of balance in kind of what I thought to a certain extent might be best in that situation.
Sure. Now the societal changes, or even industry changes or technology changes. 15 years ago there were no, I don't know, CAD/CAM classes or the things that have changed that require not only new curriculum but new materials and new capital investments.
Yeah.
How do you first of all, how do you deal with that as they come along, and how do you plan for it down the road?
You talk to the experts, you see what they think is coming down the road.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the only thing. It's like, I know in my school we actually have certain tech experts. I just need them sometimes to help me figure out how to use this program. But they're always talking about the next thing. Like yesterday, perfect example, or rather Wednesday, we had half day, release, personal development, and we spent an hour and a half as a group talking about AI and all of the things that are going on there. And the big thing we have to do there is, okay, eighth graders have figured out how to use this stuff, how to write papers.
So let's just, for anyone who doesn't understand, AI is
artificial intelligence.
Yep. And how is that available to students right now for people that don't know?
It's Google Bard. It's what's the other one? Chat.
IQ or
yes, Chat.
GBT or
it's 3 letters. Chat. I looked at it once. Yeah, but yeah, it's so easy to use. I got to use Google Bard yesterday and just punched in a couple of things about like I said, a 5-paragraph story on Romeo and Juliet, I think I said, something like that.
And it spits it out.
Like
completed.
Yes. And
perfect diction, perfect everything.
Yeah, something I wouldn't see from your average 8th grader, which is, but yeah, so we've got to find a way to stay ahead of that.
Yeah.
And so I'm guessing that's going to be a big expense. And then as far as the technologies that's available that might make our lives easy, that's always something the school's looking to invest in.
Sure. And I know during COVID, all the students in Plymouth got tablets.
Yep.
So they were all able to use that. And so once you have that, you don't not have it anymore.
Yes, and it's the same thing.
You can't go backwards.
My school, we all have Chromebooks.
Yeah,
and,
Chromebooks. That's what they had. Chromebooks. Yeah.
Chromebooks, and my introduction to teaching was the first week. I was literally just teaching online, and then to kids in their home. Then half the kids would come back one day, half the next.
Yep.
So I was teaching to. This is my first 2 weeks in teaching. I was teaching to 15 kids over here and 12 kids over here, and then a couple months later they were all back.
Yeah.
So, yeah, using the technology at that time was the learning curve had to be that. Otherwise, you're not reaching those other kids.
Right.
But like you said, that's advancing exponentially.
Yeah.
The rate at which
how do you keep up?
Yeah. You lean on your your IT experts. You have to.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I know my way around IT, but not enough to see what's coming. So I'm asking questions.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think every school committee everywhere is asking questions.
And that's obviously going to be an added expense, and things are becoming obsolete in a matter of months, years. It's like
every day it seems there's something new is on the horizon.
You still use that? How can you still use? You have an Apple phone, iPhone 8. How can you even use that?
Yeah. To be on a school committee, you need to know an awful lot of. You have to know all about how the state works, Chapter 90, how you get reimbursements, what is reimbursed, what isn't, what you can apply for grants, what you can't. And then you have to know all about all your schools. And in Plymouth, there's a lot of schools.
Yep.
There's a lot of curriculum. Yep. There's a lot of teachers. There's a lot of everything. How do you get up to speed in a place like Plymouth and be able to hit the ground running on day one if you get elected?
It's a crash course. I would have to tap the brains of the superintendent of schools, if or whatever audience I'd have. Obviously, the long-term school committee members, and I know it's an excellent board. I would just have. There would be a learning curve, no doubt about it.
Oh yeah,
yeah. So how would I do it? I would tap the people who've been there, done that, the school committee members. And I would also want to talk to, like at the state level, you talk about looking basically for grants and all that. I would understand how those grants work and what makes us more competitive when we're seeking those. So yeah, I mean, no perfect answer. Like I said, that is a new area for me, granted, admittedly, but.
A lot of homework.
Yeah. I'm good at homework.
For this volunteer job.
Yeah, for this volunteer job.
That you're not getting paid for.
Yeah.
Okay. My question number 5.
Yeah.
If a friend of yours was considering moving to Plymouth and asked you for your honest assessment of its K through 12 system, what would you highlight as its positives and the points that you think need improvement?
Okay. Well, I know a couple of years ago, I'll start with the negative, I guess, that we were, there was an issue with us possibly losing accreditation. And I knew some of the concerns were there, and I would certainly express that. But also as a positive, I think Plymouth's a phenomenal community with so many things to do. Rich social life, so many things for kids to do. The sports programs are in town, the high school sports program. I've known a lot of the coaches over the years, haven't been involved with things. I just think it's an excellent school, and I've put 4 boys through the school system. So I would say Plymouth is, it seems like a big town, but it's really got that small town feel. I mean, I live in the Ponds of Plymouth. I mean, that's that's a wonderful neighborhood to raise kids in. And I know friends that feel the same way about Plymouth. Not super expensive like some of the other towns around here, but you get a good quality education. And I've known a lot of the teachers. Like I said, I served on the boosters for several years. So I got to know like athletic directors and teachers and I just love the town of Plymouth, and I just think the school system does a wonderful job of educating our children. I've seen the product of them. I would coach many kids who came through the Plymouth school system. They were well developed, well enriched, just good young people.
How do you feel the communication is between the school department and all the parents, teachers, students, stakeholders?
When my boys were in school, the 4 sons, it was good. I mean, there's certainly legs. There's certainly, you know, every now and then something would be going on, and hey, well, you know, like a field trip I'd hear about the day before, but you know, like my kid's getting a C- when he was always been an A student. How come I didn't get a call? And, you know, but that's a microcosm. You're talking about much bigger. The school system is in general, you know, like be it like Aspen or teachers reaching out or the school department.
What is Aspen?
Aspen, that's what the system used to go in to see how, you know, just keep up with your kids' grades.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I know that's a system we use in Marshfield. I believe we used it in Plymouth too. I used to go on, and one of my particular sons tended to not do homework. So, yeah, so I'd have to,
check them out on Aspen.
Yeah. But
I
I think the school system's done a fine job of communicating with the parents. I never had any complaints, and I've never really heard any.
And what about the amount of courses that the high school level can take, the amount of disciplines you can go into, all of that?
I think it's wonderful. I mean, Marshfield also has, I mean, I'm getting my 8th graders ready for high school, and I'm looking at the electives. It's like, wow, I wish I was going to that high school. And I know Plymouth is quite similar, you know. I mean, I'm good friends with a couple of the shop teachers, and they tell me what's going on. And it's like, wow, you've got, you know, the culinary program is amazing at Plymouth South.
Yeah.
You know, the VOTEC program at Plymouth South is amazing, you know?
Yeah.
So, no, I'm glad you brought that up, actually, because if I was advocating for Plymouth, a friend was asking me about moving here, I would certainly bring that into the conversation. Because as a big school, you're going to have more opportunities like that for electives. And the kids have interests that vary all over the place. So I think it's things like marine biology and, you know, most high schools aren't offering.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, for the negatives, the accreditation issue is no longer an issue.
No, it's not. I would have, but to be honest, you know, and you know, up front, I'd say there was a couple of years ago was a problem, but it seems that Plymouth has worked through those.
Do you know of any other areas that really need improvement in the Plymouth school system?
No, I mean, classroom sizes, I don't believe it. No, none that I know. None that come to mind.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
You okay?
All right. So you have the next 5 or so minutes to speak to the camera directly.
Okay.
Talk about anything we did. And you're going to speak to this one over here.
Oh, that one.
Yep. Talk about anything we didn't talk about that you wanted to bring up, and then why people should vote for you.
Okay, sure. For as far back as I can recall, I have carried a strong desire to invest in future generations. In my early 20s, before my wife Susan and I started our family, I began coaching Babe Ruth in Holbrook, where she and I were living at the time. Susan and I moved from Holbrook to Plymouth over 30 years ago with 2 sons, Tim, who's now 34, and Ian, 32. We were blessed to bring 2 more sons into the world after that, Zach, 30, and Seth, who's 24. Once the boys got to the age where they could begin in youth sports, I resumed coaching here in Plymouth. I wound up coaching baseball in Plymouth between South Plymouth Little League, Babe Ruth, and AAU programs for nearly a quarter century. And I also coached double-digit seasons in Plymouth youth soccer and basketball. I also co-founded the Plymouth Special Olympics program over 25 years ago with the Plymouth Special Needs Aid. I had seen my oldest son, Tim, who has special needs, frustrated in his efforts to compete in local youth sports programs, and knew there were many other parents of special needs children feeling the same frustration. I invested 10 years as the Plymouth Special Olympics head coach in soccer, track, softball, flag football, and have since been the Wareham Special Olympics head coach for the last 15 years, coaching 3 sports each year, so basically year-round. I also served several years on the Plymouth South Athletic Boosters, including 2 years as the vice president. As a member of New Hope Chapel of Plymouth, I formerly led the church's youth adults ministry and taught Sunday school for many years. I currently lead a bi-monthly study group for special needs young adults. These were all volunteer positions. Lastly, in December of 2020, I left a 35-year career in the media industry, taking a significant pay cut to become a public school teacher in Marshfield. This latest role, I believe, has given me some useful insight into the daily life of a teacher and what they might need in the area of support from a school committee. My final qualification is this: as a fiscal and social conservative, I might bring some fresh perspectives to the current board. Of course, my ultimate goal as a Plymouth School Committee member would be to see that every child who walks through the door of a Plymouth school feels safe, secure, and valued. I would appreciate your vote for Plymouth School Committee in the town elections on May 20th this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael, very much for participating in this interview. We wish you the best of luck throughout your campaign and in the election. For our viewers, thank you for joining us. If you're interested in watching replays of this interview, please visit our website, pactv.org, for replay times and online viewing options, including PACTV's on-demand and streaming services, PACTV Prime. And please make your choices heard by voting in the town election on Saturday, May 20th. Thank you and good day.
Good day.